And it wouldn't have been responsible, productive, or even possible for me to talk about anything other than the racism and pain that our country is going through. And to be honest, I told Mark if he wanted to choose someone else who didn't look like me as a white woman to speak today, he was free to do so, and he encouraged me to speak. So I don't have the right credentials, I don't have the right authority, and I'm sure I don't have the right words, but I'm gonna do what I know how to do, which is to share some honest thoughts and share some ideas about moving forward and maybe build on some of this hope that I'm hearing from other people. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to say, I thought about dinner the other night with my two teenage daughters, my two white teenage daughters. And we were talking about the most recent heinous acts against the Black community. And my older daughter, who's a college student, she's home from COVID-19, she was talking about going out the next day to join the protests. And my younger daughter, who is a 10th grader in the New York City Public Schools, said she was feeling guilty. She was feeling guilty because her friends and her classmates were posting on Instagram that if you didn't speak up, if you didn't protest, then you were remaining silent, and that meant you were complicit with the racism. And she felt that her area, she's my anti-climate change activist, she felt guilty. And I realized that today, with SAMs and principals, that we would have a wide range of how people are responding, and people need to respond differently. And so this tweet from Denzel Washington spoke to me. I'm going to share this tweet, and if somebody would take themselves off of mute, could somebody read this tweet for us?
Well, I will. Resistance is not a one-lane highway. Maybe your lane is protesting, maybe your lane is organizing, maybe your lane is counseling, maybe your lane is art activism, maybe your lane is surviving the day. Do not feel guilty for not occupying every lane. We need all of them.
Thank you, Mark. So what is our lane as school leaders? What's our lane? I deeply believe, and I bet that it's why many of you entered the field, that the educational system, more than any other system, has the potential to create the type of transformational change and begin to address this deep racial injustice. As my husband says, long-term problems need long-term solutions. And I think that we're all involved in education. We're all involved in this long-term solution. Laws can change, the criminal justice system can change, but the educators in this room are changing the people. We're changing the values, we're changing the actions, we're changing the beliefs of young people. Not just any young people, but the people who are going to shape our world tomorrow. So if you're not convinced of the power of this, consider this. Someone in this country was the kindergarten teacher of Derek Chauvin, the cop who murdered George Floyd. Someone in this country was the third grade teacher of Derek Chauvin. Someone in this country was the 12th grade teacher of Chauvin. And someone in this country was the principal of Chauvin. So it might be a bit controversial or edgy to ask, but take a moment and think, turn back time. What would you have done if you were Derek Chauvin's teacher many years ago? I was a middle school teacher, and if he had been in my class, he would have studied To Kill a Mockingbird and Master Harold and the Boys, a play by the South African playwright Atol Fugard. And I can promise you that the focus was not on getting the questions right at the end of the chapter. The focus was on getting social justice right. So I think we have tremendous responsibility because we have tremendous potential to change the people. As school leaders and as SAMs, we know that education is about long-term change. And this is where my word determination comes in, and maybe it's why so many of you chose the word hopeful. So what does a school leader do with this responsibility, with this platform, with this potential for long-term change? Well, you have to choose your own lane, as Denzel Washington said. But I think we need to take the responsibility, take the reins to think of an immediate response and to think of a long-term response. I'm going to start with the short term. So the first thing that I think we all need to do is to send a communication to the school community. Actually, I'm going to stop for a moment, and Mark has a poll. Just a second. How many of you have written to parents, students, staff about the recent actions of racism, discrimination, and injustice? So this is anonymous. We can't see what you write, but if everybody could just share with us a brief answer. So far, it's about even. Some people have. Take about 10 more seconds. So Mark, can you share the results of the poll with everybody? Or, oh, I can, I'm a co-presenter. Here we go.
Here they are.
Okay, so it's looks like about a third have and about 2/3 have not. Unsure if it's their role, maybe planning to do it. Thanks, everyone. So, so the first thing I do think that we do need to do is send some type of communication. You might not feel comfortable. You might not have the right words. I don't feel comfortable right now, and I know that I don't have the words right now, but I do think if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, as Alexander Hamilton said. We have a platform, and we must speak. And we need a response that is both personal and institutional. Because after all, and I'm sure you've all realized this, leading is personal. We set the tone for our schools. How we feel is contagious. The community feels what we feel. So I would really encourage you to craft a communication that you do send out. And I'm going to share an example. But what do you include in that communication? Start with your heart. Start inside. What were the 2 words that you shared with us today or didn't share? Read other statements. Part of what's huge right now is the powerful statements coming out, even from huge multinational corporations that are coming out and strongly condemning racism and violence. Go look at the Ben & Jerry's statement. It's inspirational, even though they're owned by Unilever. Look at the statements of some organizations. I just read the one from Transcend Education, and it's powerful. I'm happy to send you the links. I'm going to share one example from my daughter's university president. So this is from a white woman, a traditional university, and she writes, "I'm usually a measured person. I believe that focus and hard work brings change, but today that is not enough. I write to you sad, frustrated, and angry. The horrific acts of violence against Black communities break our hearts. I just want to scream, stop. The killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery laid bare the deep wounds of racism that have plagued our country for too long. My heart goes out to everyone hurting from these unacceptable tragedies and the centuries of injustice they represent." And this is just the beginning. She goes on to add more. So I'm happy to share this link with you. The second thing I think we need to do after we send out a communication is to provide opportunities for listening and healing. As school leaders, sometimes we got into the position we're in because we're good at speaking. But now we really need to offer opportunities for listening like Mark has offered right now, which we'll do in the breakout room briefly. But what are the structures can you as the leader put into place so that people can stop and listen? I know we're all rushing. We're trying to figure out blended learning. I know one district that has 12 different models of what school might look like in the fall, but can you put a pause on it? Can you put a pause on the planning and provide structures for learning? Well, how do you do that? Well, maybe at a staff meeting, you share the mood meter just like I did, and you give staff a few minutes just to share how they're feeling. Doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe you offer one-on-one meetings for any staff member or student who wants to reach out and talk to you. Maybe you call for a town hall that would include the entire community and have an open conversation. Maybe you share some suggestions with teachers, if you're still in session or if you're not, for how they might have smaller listening communities. I just sat in on a brilliant class where my daughter's teacher showed a 12-minute video of Trevor Noah and then had a simple conversation with 2 guidelines. One, you decide if being right, if you decide if being here is right for you, you can leave if you don't want to be here. And 2, this is a community space for everyone. So those are some simple structures for providing listening opportunities for people in your community. And then I think, yes, we do need to provide long-term responses, not just to the grief and the pain and the priorities of now, but long-term actions to address the deep racial inequities. I worry that people in our school communities are feeling hopeless and discouraged, and you saw all the words. But COVID-19 has opened up possibilities for change because we have to remake school in the fall anyway. So if we have to remake it anyway, what are some of the things we can do to include a more equitable and just community setting for our students? So I'm giving 6 areas. I don't have the answers. I'm only providing the questions. But these are 6 areas where we can think as we're doing our back to school planning, what can we do to address inequity and injustice? So curriculum. What else can we do to make it more multicultural, include social justice? Have you looked at the materials from Teaching Tolerance or Facing History? There's some wonderful suggestions going all over social media. Discipline. I just read that African American students are 338% more likely to be suspended than their white peers. So what are we doing to make our discipline more restorative, less punitive? School culture. How can we make our school culture more collaborative? Sometimes our school culture is more implicitly white than we know. It's individualistic, it's competitive. Perhaps we can make it safer, anti-racist, more inclusive. Professional learning. Do you have any sessions planned to help teachers deal with identity, race, teaching students who look like them or students who don't look like them? Hiring, it's a hiring season. This is a perfect opportunity. Not only can you diversify your staff, but also think about the questions you could ask to find out if a teacher sees her work as working towards social justice and not just compliance and control. And then finally, decision-making. How can you make decision-making more inclusive? Who's on those committees? Who's making those decisions? So again, I don't have any of the answers. I'm just here to pose the questions. We're going to go into breakout rooms. It's 11:20, and it's your choice. Either one, share how you're feeling at this moment. It's a really powerful thing to take the time and the space to do that. Perhaps you could elaborate on the 2 words that you chose, or 2, commit to doing one thing to change your school, either an immediate response or a more long-term, to make your school more equitable and more welcome. But most importantly, believe in your communities more than they believe in themselves, and be well. And thanks for giving me this time.
Jen, thank you so much for spending the time with us. Before we go to breakout rooms, I know we'd all like to thank Jen. Can you wave? Can you do the thumbs up? Can you do something in the chat room? I'll go ahead and copy all the chat room comments so we can share those with Jen if you'd like. And I see lots of chat thank yous coming up. Wave, thank you so much. Many of you were at the last national conference and saw Jen David Lang do a wonderful keynote with Kim Marshall on a book that they wrote together called The Best in the Marshall Memo. The reason the 2 of them collaborated on that book is Jen has a website called The Main Idea. Many of you are receiving The Main Idea information and summaries of books and the professional development that goes along with them already. Many of you may not be aware that you can receive that through SAMS, and we don't charge you for it. Jen gives us a great rate, so we can afford to do it. And so if you would like to receive The Main Idea, you'll be able to tell us that when you respond to Jim's email he'll be sending out right after this session today. Also, we'll be offering the book. If you didn't receive the book at the national conference, you weren't able to come, we will have the book for you to request as well, and we'll mail that to you. Jenn also shared a number of resources with us, including a great chart. And I believe someone mentioned where that chart came from on the chat room. I'm trying to remember who. But anyhow, that chart we'll make available, and also the PowerPoint slides. Jenn, could we make those available as well? We'll make that available in the item that we send out in a few minutes that Jim will prepare. Jenn, thank you so much for doing this. During the breakout rooms that will run for the next 20 minutes, if you'd like, anyone who doesn't want to participate in the breakout rooms, you can go ahead and sign off now if you'd like. We'll go ahead and set up those breakout rooms, and you can talk about the question or the conversation that Jenn asked you to consider during the breakout room, or you can talk about other things. Jenn, you, I know, kind of posed a suggestion to people that they needed to communicate with their school communities. And I appreciate that, and I think that that makes a lot of sense. And it was also interesting to see how many people either have done that or are planning to do it. And so I think that's really impressive. You also were really careful to point out that you have to be really thoughtful about that. And I loved how you talked about speaking from the heart. That's an important piece. You also have to speak from the head in terms of the situation you're in and how a message will be received. And so that's a thoughtful thing as well. So Jenn, anything else you want to share with us before we move to breakout rooms?
Just feel free to email me if I spoke too quickly and there are any resources you want, or even if you just want to reach out and say anything. My email address, Mark has it, it's on my website. So.
And we'll put the email address and the website in the email that we send to you in just a moment. We're getting ready to create the breakout rooms right now. And we now have sent you invitations to join your breakout rooms. Take care, everyone.